Every Friday, just as the clock struck 3, my dad would grab his old leather jacket, slip on his worn-out shoes, and head out the door. It didn't matter if the sky was pouring rain or blazing with summer heat, he always left at the same time, always with the same quiet determination. I'd watch him from the window, my breath fogging up the glass, wondering what could possibly be so important at the bank every single week. My mom would just shrug if I asked, and my siblings never seemed to care. To them, it was just another part of our family routine, like Sunday dinners or birthday cakes. But for me, it was a mystery that grew heavier with each passing year. I never asked why. Maybe I was afraid of the answer. But after he died, I realized I should have. What was my dad really doing every Friday? To everyone else, we looked like a normal family. We had the backyard barbecues, the holiday photos, the laughter echoing through the house. But I always felt something was missing, like there was a secret language everyone else understood but me. My dad was loving in his own way. He'd ruffle my hair, tell me to work hard, and sometimes sit beside me in silence, as if searching for words he couldn't quite say. But he was also distant, his mind wandering somewhere I could never follow. My mom, always busy in the kitchen or on the phone, would change the subject if I brought up Dad's Friday trips. "He just likes his routines," she'd say, her eyes darting away. My siblings seemed content, caught up in their own worlds, but I noticed how Dad's mood would shift after those bank visits. He'd come home quieter, his smile a little forced, his eyes clouded with something I couldn't name. Sometimes, he'd disappear into his study for hours, the door closed tight. The more I watched, the more I wondered if I was the only one who saw the cracks in our perfect family picture. Why did my dad always come home quieter on Fridays? When my dad died, it felt like the world had tilted off its axis. One moment he was there, humming softly as he tied his shoes for another Friday trip, and the next, he was gone, no warning, no goodbye. The house filled with the heavy silence of grief, broken only by the shuffle of visitors and the low murmur of condolences. At the funeral, I caught snippets of conversation, relatives whispering about Dad's strange habits, the way he'd vanish every week like clockwork. Some said it was just his way of coping with stress, others hinted at secrets best left buried. My siblings clung to each other, eager to remember the good times and move forward, but I couldn't let go. The question of his Friday ritual gnawed at me, louder now that he was gone. I wandered through the empty house, searching for something, anything, that might explain the man I thought I knew. That's when I found it. A small, tarnished key tucked away in the back of his desk drawer, wrapped in a faded handkerchief. I thought the truth would die with him, until I found the key. What was the key for? The key felt heavy in my pocket as I retraced my father's old Friday route, my heart pounding with every step. I found a crumpled bank receipt tucked inside his wallet, dated just a week before he died, and an old letter addressed to a name I didn't recognize. The pieces didn't fit, but I followed them anyway, desperate for answers. At the bank, I handed the key to the manager, my voice barely steady. She led me to a private room and unlocked a safety deposit box I never knew existed. Inside, I found a stack of documents, faded photographs, and a thick envelope with my name written in my father's careful handwriting. I sat down, hands trembling, and opened the letter. My father's words spilled out in shaky script, confessing to a secret he'd carried for years. He wrote about a family he'd supported in another town, a woman he'd loved before meeting my mother, and a child he'd never been able to claim as his own. Every Friday, he'd visit the bank to send money, to keep a promise he'd made long before I was born. He wrote about the guilt, the fear of losing us, and the pain of living a double life. As I read his letter, my hands shook. Everything I thought I knew about my family was a lie. The photographs showed a boy who looked just like me, smiling beside a woman with my father's eyes. Would I ever be able to forgive him or myself? I gathered my family in the living room, the letter and photographs trembling in my hands. My voice cracked as I told them everything, about the safety deposit box, the other family, the years of secrets Dad had carried alone. At first, there was only stunned silence. Then the anger erupted, sharp and raw. My brother shouted that it couldn't be true, that Dad would never do something like this. My sister wept, clutching Mom's arm, while Mom just stared at the floor, her face pale and unreadable. Grief twisted through the room, mingling with disbelief and betrayal. I felt like I was drowning in it, torn between my own pain and the agony I'd just unleashed on the people I loved most. I thought the truth would set me free. Instead, it nearly tore us apart. We argued late into the night, voices rising and falling, each of us desperate to make sense of the man we thought we knew. But as the anger faded, I began to see the weight my father must have carried, how he tried to protect us, even as he hid so much. Could we ever heal from this? I honestly didn't know. In the months that followed, the sharp edges of our grief softened, replaced by a quiet understanding. My mother began to talk about the early days of her marriage, the things she'd sensed but never dared to ask. My siblings and I found ourselves reaching for each other more, sharing memories and questions, slowly stitching our family back together with threads of honesty. The pain didn't vanish, but it became something we could carry together, instead of alone. One final Friday, I returned to the bank, the same key in my hand. This time, I left a letter for my father, words I wished I'd spoken when he was alive. I told him I forgave him, that I understood why he made the choices he did, even if they hurt us. I promised to live with more courage, to ask the hard questions, and to never let fear keep me from the truth. Sometimes, the truth hurts. But it's the only way to heal. If you have a family secret, don't wait, ask. You might not get another chance. What would you do if you discovered your family's biggest secret?